The apartment door shouldn't have been open. Dante Caruso noticed it immediately as he stepped off the elevator on the 4th floor of the modest building in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood. His daughter's babysitter, Chen, was religious about security, one of the reasons he trusted her with Lily for the past 6 months. The slightly ajar door sent ice through his veins. His hand moved instinctively toward the gun concealed beneath his tailored jacket as he pushed the door open slowly, silently. The apartment was small, clean, filled with the kind of cheerful clutter that came from raising a 4-year-old. Coloring books on the coffee table, stuffed animals arranged on the couch, Lily's tiny sneakers by the door. But something was wrong. The television was on but muted. A pot of water boiled over on the stove, hissing and spitting. And there, in the narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms, Dante saw his daughter. Lily stood perfectly still, her back pressed against the wall, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Her brown eyes, the same shade as her late mother's, were wide with fear. But she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at something in the bedroom doorway. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Lily, Dante said softly, using the calm voice he perfected over years of navigating dangerous situations. Come to Daddy. But Lily didn't move. She just shook her head slightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dante's heart hammered as he moved forward. Every instinct screamed danger, but not the kind he was used to. This wasn't a business rival or a federal raid. This was something that had terrified his daughter so badly she couldn't even run to him. He reached Lily in 3 strides, scooped her into his arms, and turned to face whatever threat had paralyzed his child with fear. Chen stood in the bedroom doorway, her small frame swaying like a tree in a storm. Her face was pale, almost gray. Blood trickled from her nose, and her right eye was already swelling shut. But it was her arms that made Dante's breath catch in his throat. Bruises, fresh ones, dark purple and angry, circling both wrists like handcuffs. More bruises on her forearms, defensive wounds that Dante recognized from 3 decades of violence. Someone had grabbed her, hard, recently. Mr. Caruso, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm so sorry. I tried to. I couldn't. Then her knees buckled. Dante moved on pure instinct, shifting Lily to one arm while catching Maya with the other before she hit the floor. She was lighter than he expected, all bones and trembling muscles, and as he lowered her gently to the carpet, his hand came away sticky with blood. There was a gash on the back of her head, hidden by her dark hair. Recent, still bleeding. Lily, sweetheart, Dante said, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. Go to your room and close the door. Don't come out until Daddy says, okay? Lily nodded, clutching her rabbit tighter, and ran down the hallway. The soft click of her bedroom door was the only sound for a moment. Then Dante turned his full attention to the young woman lying unconscious on his daughter's babysitter's apartment floor, and the cold, calculating part of his brain, the part that had built an empire on the streets of New York, began putting pieces together. Maya had been working for him for 6 months. 23 years old, putting herself through nursing school, picking up babysitting jobs to cover the rent her financial aid didn't. She'd come highly recommended by his housekeeper, who knew someone who knew Maya's grandmother. The background check Dante always ran on anyone who entered his daughter's life had come back clean. No criminal record, no concerning associations, just a young woman working herself to exhaustion to build a better future. She'd been perfect, always on time, patient with Lily, creative with activities, never once prying into Dante's business. Lily had bonded with her immediately, something that rarely happened since her mother's death 2 years ago. But now, seeing those bruises, that blood, Dante realized he'd missed something crucial. He pressed 2 fingers to Maya's neck, checking her pulse. It was there, weak but steady. Her breathing was shallow, and when he carefully turned her head to examine the wound, he saw that it was worse than he'd thought. Someone had slammed her head against something hard, the doorframe, maybe, or the edge of a table. Dante pulled out his phone and dialed. Not 911, that would bring questions he couldn't answer, attention he couldn't afford. Instead, he called Marco, his most trusted associate. I need Dr. Rees at Chen's apartment. 4th floor, Unit 4C, Sunset Park. Now. And Marco, come prepared for cleanup. He ended the call and looked down at Maya's face. Even unconscious, even beaten, there was something fierce about her. Her jaw was set with determination, and her hands, he noticed now, were scraped raw, knuckles split like she'd been fighting back. That's when he saw it. On the coffee table, partially hidden under one of Lily's coloring books, was a cell phone. Not Maya's usual phone. He'd seen that one dozens of times. A cheap smartphone with a cracked screen that she'd apologized for constantly. This was different. A burner phone, the kind people used when they didn't want calls traced. Dante picked it up carefully. The screen was unlocked, frozen on a text message conversation. You have until midnight, $50,000, or we tell everyone what you did. Below that, Maya's response, timestamp 30 minutes ago. I don't have that kind of money. Please, I'm begging you, just leave me alone. The next message made Dante's blood run cold. Then we're coming for you. And maybe we'll take that little girl you're always with. I bet her rich daddy would pay a lot more than 50 grand. Dante read the messages 3 times, his mind racing through scenarios and possibilities. Maya was being blackmailed. The blackmailers had come here, to his daughter's babysitter's apartment, and they'd beaten her badly enough to knock her unconscious. And they'd threatened Lily. The rage that flooded through him was familiar, almost comforting in its intensity. This was the part of himself that had built his reputation, the part that made grown men step aside when he walked down the street. Someone had threatened his daughter. Someone had hurt a woman under his protection, because whether Maya knew it or not, working for Dante Caruso meant you were under his protection. And whoever had done this was about to learn exactly what that meant. But first, he needed to understand what Maya had done that was worth blackmailing her over. What secret was dangerous enough that she'd endure a beating rather than come to him for help? The apartment door burst open. Marco entered first, hand on his weapon, followed by Dr. Reeves carrying his medical bag. The doctor was in his 60s, discreet, well compensated for asking no questions and treating injuries that couldn't go through official channels. How bad? Reeves asked, kneeling beside Maya without preamble. Head wound, unconscious, multiple contusions. She was beaten within the last hour. Reeves worked quickly, checking vitals, examining the gash on her head. She needs stitches, probably a CT scan to rule out serious head trauma. I can stabilize her here, but she should really be in a hospital. Not an option, Dante said flatly. Do what you can here. If she needs more, we'll arrange transport to the private facility in Manhattan. As Reeves began treating Maya's injuries, Dante handed the burner phone to Marco. Find out who sent these messages. I want names, addresses, and everything they've done in the past year. And I want it before morning. Marco glanced at the messages, his expression darkening. Boss, if they threatened Lily, then they signed their own death warrants, Dante finished quietly. But I need to know why first. What does Chen have in her past that's worth $50,000 in blackmail money? Marco nodded and stepped into the hallway, phone already pressed to his ear, issuing orders to their tech specialist. Dante walked down the hallway to check on Lily. His daughter sat on her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals, still clutching that rabbit. She looked up when he entered, her eyes red from crying. Is Mai going to be okay, Daddy? Dante sat beside her, pulling her into his lap. The doctor is helping her right now. She's going to be fine. Why was she sleeping in the hallway? And why was her face all red? How do you explain violence to a 4-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that the world is full of people who hurt others for money, for power, for reasons that don't make sense to anyone with a conscience? Maya had an accident, Dante said carefully. But she's very brave, and she's going to be okay. You were very good to stay quiet when Daddy asked. I'm proud of you. Lily nodded, accepting this explanation the way children do, trusting that the adults around them will keep them safe. Dante held her tighter, thinking about those text messages, about the threat to take her. He built his empire on careful calculation, on knowing when to use force and when to use patience. But this was different. This was his daughter. And the rules he lived by, the ones about avoiding unnecessary violence, about keeping civilian casualties to 0, those rules didn't apply when someone threatened Lily. Can I see Maya when she wakes up? Lily asked. Maybe tomorrow, Princess. Right now, she needs to rest. Okay. Lily yawned, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. Daddy, will you stay with me tonight? Every minute, Dante promised. He carried Lily to her bedroom in Maya's apartment, laying her down gently and covering her with the blanket. He sat beside her bed, one hand on his phone, ready to respond to any threat, while his daughter slowly drifted asleep. Through the door, he could hear Dr. Reeves working on Maya, the soft murmur of instructions to Marco about cleaning supplies and bandages. Outside the window, Brooklyn's nighttime symphony played on, sirens in the distance, cars honking, the rumble of the subway underground. Dante's phone buzzed. A text from Marco. Got something. You need to see this. Dante waited until Lily was fully asleep before slipping out of the bedroom. In the living room, Dr. Reeves had finished his work. Maya lay on the couch now, for drip in her arm, bandages wrapped around her head. Her breathing was steadier, and some color had returned to her cheeks. She'll wake up in a few hours, Reeves said, packing his medical bag. The head wound looked worse than it is. Scalp injuries bleed a lot. No signs of serious brain trauma, but I want to monitor her for the next 24 hours. If she shows any signs of confusion, nausea, or dizziness, call me immediately. Thank you, doctor. After Reeves left, Marco handed Dante a tablet. Our tech guy traced the messages. They came from a phone registered to a known enforcer who works for the Volkov organization. The Volkovs, Russian mob operating out of Brighton Beach, known for their brutality and their expansion into territories that technically belong to other families, including some that paid tribute to Dante's organization. What would the Volkovs want with a nursing student? Dante asked, though pieces were already forming in his mind. Marco pulled up another file. 2 years ago, Chen was working as an ER nurse at Brooklyn Methodist. There was an incident. A shooting victim came in, someone connected to the Volkov organization. Maya treated him, saved his life. But before the police could question him, he disappeared from the hospital. Just walked out, despite having a bullet lodged near his spine. Maya helped him escape. That's the theory. There's no proof, but Internal Affairs investigated her. She was cleared, but she lost her job anyway. The hospital said it was personnel restructuring, but everyone knew what it really was. Dante studied Maya's unconscious form with new understanding. She'd saved someone's life, probably out of some misguided sense of medical ethics, and now they were blackmailing her for it. Classic Volkov strategy: find someone's moment of kindness and turn it into a weapon. There's more, Marco continued. The guy she saved? Viktor Sokolov. He's dead now, killed in a territory dispute 3 months ago. But before he died, he apparently told someone about the nurse who helped him. Someone who saw an opportunity. Let me guess. They're threatening to tell the police that she aided a criminal, maybe even claim she was paid to do it. That would destroy any chance of her becoming a nurse, might even get her arrested. Marco nodded. And 50 grand is nothing compared to what they'd lose if they actually went to the police. This is pure extortion. They're bleeding her dry. Dante's jaw tightened. Maya had been suffering in silence for months, probably working herself to exhaustion to try to scrape together money for blackmailers who would never stop demanding more. And when she couldn't pay, they'd come here and beaten her. In his daughter's babysitter's apartment, where Lily could have been. Find them, Dante said quietly. His voice carried the weight of years of command, of orders that ended lives and changed territories. Every person involved in this. I want them located by morning. Boss, if we move against the Volkovs, it could start. I don't care what it starts, Dante interrupted. They came into an apartment where my daughter was present. They threatened to take her. They put their hands on someone under my protection. There are lines, Marco. Lines that don't get crossed. Not ever. Marco studied his boss's face for a moment, then nodded slowly. He'd worked for Dante Caruso long enough to recognize when negotiation was off the table. After Marco left, Dante sat in the chair across from the couch where Maya lay sleeping. The apartment was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city outside. He watched Maya breathe, watched the way her eyelids flickered slightly, probably dreaming. She looked young like this, vulnerable. Easy to forget she was old enough to make choices that had consequences, old enough to carry secrets that could destroy her. But what struck Dante most was something he'd noticed earlier, something that made this entire situation even more complicated. When he'd burst through the door, when he'd seen Lily frozen with fear in the hallway, Maya hadn't been collapsed in the doorway by accident. She'd been standing there deliberately, her body positioned between Lily's bedroom and wherever the threat had come from. Even beaten, even bleeding, Chen had placed herself as a shield for his daughter. That kind of instinct couldn't be faked. That kind of courage wasn't something you learned in nursing school or read about in books. It was the same instinct that made mothers lift cars off their trapped children, that made soldiers throw themselves on grenades to save their units. Maya had been willing to die to protect Lily, and Dante Caruso always paid his debts. He pulled out his phone and made another call. This one went to his lawyer, the kind of attorney who specialized in making problems disappear. "I need you to look into something." A nurse named Chen investigated 2 years ago for allegedly helping a criminal escape from Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. "I want to know everything, the investigation, the evidence, the witnesses. And I want to know if there's any way to make this go away, permanently." "That kind of cleanup could be expensive," the lawyer warned. "I don't care what it costs," Dante said. "Make it happen." He ended the call and settled back in the chair, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. Outside, dawn was still hours away. His daughter slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that her world had almost been shattered tonight. But Dante knew. He understood exactly how close they'd come to disaster. And he was going to make sure that anyone who had contributed to that near miss paid in full. The girl who'd collapsed protecting his daughter was about to discover what it meant to have the loyalty of a man like Dante Caruso. And the people who'd hurt her were about to learn why that same loyalty was the most dangerous thing in New York City. Maya's eyes opened slowly, fighting against the heaviness that pressed down on her like a physical weight. The first thing she registered was pain, a throbbing ache in her head that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The second thing was the ceiling above her, unfamiliar and wrong. This wasn't her apartment ceiling. This ceiling was ornate, decorated with intricate molding that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Crown molding framed a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a bedroom. She tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it. The room spun violently, and nausea rose in her throat. "Easy." A hand pressed gently against her shoulder, guiding her back down. "Doctor's orders are to take it slow." Maya turned her head carefully, and found herself staring at Dante Caruso. He sat in an armchair beside the bed, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and there was stubble on his jaw that suggested he hadn't slept. But his eyes, those dark, penetrating eyes that had always made her slightly nervous, were alert and focused entirely on her. "Mr. Caruso," she managed, her voice coming out as a croak. "What? Where am I?" "My home. The doctor said you needed observation for 24 hours, and your apartment wasn't secure." He picked up a glass of water from the nightstand and held it out to her. "Small sips." Maya took the glass with trembling hands, suddenly aware that she was wearing clothes that weren't hers, soft cotton pajamas that definitely belonged to someone else. Someone had changed her, cleaned her up, bandaged her wounds. The memories came flooding back in fragments. The knock on her door. The 2 men who'd pushed their way inside. The way one of them had grabbed her wrists, while the other demanded money she didn't have. Lily's terrified face as Maya tried to keep the men away from the bedroom. The impact when her head hit the doorframe, and then nothing. "Lily," Maya gasped, trying to sit up again despite the pain. "Is she safe?" Dante's voice was firm, commanding. "She's downstairs having breakfast with Maria, my housekeeper. She's been asking about you every 10 minutes since she woke up." Relief flooded through Maya so intensely that tears sprang to her eyes. "Thank God. I thought. When they mentioned her, I thought. They mentioned my daughter." Dante's voice didn't change, but something in his expression shifted. It was subtle, just a slight narrowing of his eyes, a tightening around his mouth. But Maya had learned to read people during her years in emergency rooms, and what she saw in Dante's face made her shiver despite the warm room. She nodded slowly. They said if I didn't pay, they'd come after her. That you'd pay more than I could. I tried to get them to leave, but they..." Her hand moved instinctively to the back of her head, where she could feel bandages under her fingers. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on something she couldn't see. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Maya, I need you to tell me everything. Who's blackmailing you? Why? And how long this has been going on? I can't. The words came out automatically, the same response she'd given herself every time she considered asking for help over the past 6 months. If I tell anyone, they said they'd go to the police. I'd lose my license before I even finished school. I'd go to prison. My grandmother in Chinatown, she depends on the money I send her. I can't, Maya. Dante leaned forward, and despite the gentleness in his voice, there was steel underneath. Look at me. She met his eyes, and what she saw there surprised her. Not the coldness she'd expected, not the calculating assessment of a man deciding if she was worth the trouble. Instead, she saw something almost protective, an intensity that made her breath catch. You collapsed protecting my daughter, he said quietly. You put yourself between Lily and danger, even though you were already hurt. That means something to me. That means you're under my protection now, whether you want to be or not. So tell me who hurt you, and I promise you, they will never threaten you or Lily again. Maya wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, a nursing student being protected by one of New York's most notorious crime bosses. But there was nothing amusing about the sincerity in his voice, or the very real danger she'd been living with for months. So she told him everything. 2 years ago, working the night shift at Brooklyn Methodist, a man had been brought in with a gunshot wound to the lower back. Critical condition, bleeding out. Maya had been the lead trauma nurse, and she'd worked for 3 hours to stabilize him while the surgeons prepped for emergency surgery. The man had been conscious, delirious with pain, begging her in Russian-accented English not to let the police take him. They'll kill me in custody, he kept saying. Please, I have a daughter. They'll kill me before morning. Maya had seen the fear in his eyes, genuine terror that went beyond pain or worry about prison. And in a moment of compassion that had cost her everything, she believed him. When the patient had been stable enough, when the police officer guarding his room had stepped away for coffee, Maya had disconnected the monitors in a way that would give him a 10-minute window before alarms sounded. She pointed toward the service elevator. She turned her back while he'd stumbled away, leaving a trail of blood that she'd cleaned up afterward. The hospital had launched an investigation. Internal Affairs had questioned her for weeks. But there was no proof. The security footage had mysteriously malfunctioned that night, and Maya had stuck to her story. The patient must have disconnected himself and escaped while she was dealing with another emergency. She'd been cleared officially, but the hospital had let her go anyway, citing budget cuts and restructuring. Every hospital she'd applied to since had turned her down. The Whisper network in New York's medical community was small and ruthless. Everyone knew what she'd done, even if they couldn't prove it. She'd gone back to nursing school, working multiple jobs to stay afloat. And then, 6 months ago, a man had approached her outside her apartment building. He knew what she'd done. He had evidence, photos, testimony from someone who'd seen her help the patient escape. He wanted $50,000 to keep quiet. I've been paying them in installments, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. $3,000 a month, which is almost everything I make after rent and my grandmother's care. But last month, they doubled the amount. Said they needed a lump sum, or they'd go to the police. I tried to explain I didn't have it, that I couldn't possibly. Her voice broke. Dante's expression hadn't changed throughout her entire confession, but his hands had curled into fists on the arms of the chair. The man you saved, do you remember his name? Victor something. I only heard it once, when the police were asking about him. Victor Sokolov, Dante said. He worked for the Volkov organization. He's dead now, killed 3 months ago in a territory dispute. Maya felt her stomach drop. Then why are they still blackmailing me? If he's dead, what does it matter? Because it was never about the past. It was about finding someone vulnerable they could exploit. Dante stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the manicured grounds of his estate. The Volkovs have been pushing into territories that belong to other families. They need money to fund their expansion, and blackmail is cleaner than drug dealing or robbery. Less police attention. I don't understand. What does this have to do with you? Dante turned back to face her, and for the first time, Maya saw something dangerous in his expression. Not directed at her, but at something beyond the walls of this room. The Volkovs crossed a line when they came to that apartment. They threatened my daughter. They put their hands on someone I've entrusted with Lily's safety. In my world, that's a declaration of war. Maya felt cold despite the warm room. Mr. Caruso, I appreciate you helping me, but I can't. I won't be responsible for starting some kind of gang war. People could die. People will die, Dante interrupted calmly. But there'll be people who chose to threaten a 4-year-old child. That's not on you, Maya. That's on them. He returned to the chair beside her bed, his expression softening slightly. But right now, what matters is keeping you safe and making sure you can finish your education without looking over your shoulder. My lawyer is already working on the hospital situation. The evidence the Volkovs have, or claim to have, will disappear. And the blackmail stops today. Maya stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Why would you do all this? I'm just your daughter's babysitter. You're the woman who was willing to die to protect my child, Dante said simply. That's not just anything. Before Maya could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. A moment later, it burst open, and Lily ran inside, her face lighting up when she saw Maya awake. Maya, you're okay. Lily scrambled onto the bed, careful to avoid Maya's injuries, and wrapped her small arms around her neck. I was so worried. Daddy said you had an accident, but you're going to be fine now, right? Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks as she hugged the little girl back. I'm okay, sweetheart. I promise. Maria made pancakes, and Daddy said when you wake up, you can have some too. And you can stay here as long as you want because we have lots of rooms and Daddy says you need to rest and... Lily, let Maya breathe, Dante said gently, but there was a smile in his voice that Maya had never heard before. Watching him with his daughter, seeing the way his entire demeanor changed, the hardness melting into something tender and protective, Maya realized that the man the world feared was just a father who would do anything to keep his child safe. And somehow, she'd become part of that protected circle. Over the next few days, Maya discovered that being under Dante Caruso's protection meant living in a different world entirely. The estate was massive, a former mansion in the exclusive neighborhood of Brooklyn Heights that had been converted into a fortress disguised as a family home. Security cameras tracked every entrance. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, though they dressed like groundskeepers and maintenance workers. Every window had bulletproof glass. Every door had biometric locks. But inside, it felt like a home. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the family room. The kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and whatever Maria was baking that day. Maya had her own room, a guest suite larger than her entire apartment, with an attached bathroom that had a tub big enough to swim in. Someone, she suspected Maria, had brought clothes in her size, comfortable things that were nicer than anything Maya had ever owned. Dr. Reeves visited twice a day to check on her recovery. The head wound was healing well, he said, but she needed rest. No work, no stress, just time to let her body repair itself. But rest was difficult when her mind wouldn't stop racing. She was living in a crime boss's house. She was eating meals at his table, watching movies with his daughter, being treated like family by people who worked for a man who, she had to assume, had done terrible things to build his empire. And yet, nothing about Dante's behavior suggested the monster she'd expected. He read to Lily every night, doing voices for different characters that made his daughter giggle uncontrollably. He helped with homework, patiently explaining math problems until Lily understood. He made breakfast on weekends, elaborate spreads of pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, everything arranged carefully on plates. He was gentle, attentive, the kind of father Maya had always imagined but never had herself. On the 4th day of her stay, Maya found him in his study late at night. She couldn't sleep, the medications Dr. Reeves had prescribed making her drowsy during the day and wired at night. She'd wander downstairs for water and noticed light spilling from under his door. She knocked softly. "Mr. Caruso? Come in." His voice sounded tired. Maya pushed the door open and found Dante behind a massive oak desk, papers spread out in front of him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He'd removed his jacket and tie, and his shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. He looked less like a crime boss and more like any businessman working late. "Can't sleep," he asked, gesturing to the chair across from him. The medicine makes me restless. Maya sat down, pulling her robe tighter around herself. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. I know I keep saying it, but I don't think you understand how much. You don't need to thank me, Dante interrupted gently. You saved my daughter's life. Everything else is just repayment. She was never really in danger. I was there, Maya. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with those intense dark eyes. Those men came to your apartment specifically because they knew Lily would be there. They knew that threatening her would be more effective than threatening you. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't put yourself between them and her. He didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of it hung in the air. Maya felt her throat tighten. She hadn't let herself think about what might have happened if she'd arrived even 5 minutes later, if she'd stopped to grab coffee on her way to the babysitting job. The blackmail is taken care of, Dante continued, picking up his whiskey glass and swirling the amber liquid. The evidence they claimed to have? It never existed. They were bluffing, using your guilt against you. And the people who hurt you. His jaw tightened slightly. They won't be bothering anyone else. Maya didn't ask what that meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. What about the Volkovs? She asked instead. You said this would start a war. Let me worry about the Volkovs. Dante's voice carried a finality that suggested the subject was closed. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Maya found herself studying him, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the reputation that preceded him. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Dante nodded. How did you become? She gestured vaguely, uncertain how to phrase the question politely. A criminal. Dante smiled slightly, though there was no humor in it. Family business. My grandfather built the foundation, my father expanded it, and I inherited the whole operation when I was 25. Too young, too angry, and too determined to prove I deserved the position. Did you ever think about doing something else? Every day. The honesty in his voice surprised her, especially after Lily was born. Her mother, Isabella, she wanted me to go legitimate, said we had enough money, enough legitimate businesses that we could walk away clean. Start fresh somewhere else. Why didn't you? Dante was quiet for a long moment, staring into his whiskey glass like it held answers. Because walking away isn't that simple. The people who work for me, who depend on me, they can't just disappear. The territories we control, the protection we provide to businesses that the police can't help, that doesn't just vanish. And the enemies I've made over the years, they don't care if I'm retired. They'd still come after my family. He looked up at Maya, and she saw something in his expression that looked almost like regret. Isabella understood that, eventually. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd make sure Lily had a different life. A better life. Normal schools, normal friends, no knowledge of what her father really does until she's old enough to choose how much she wants to know. That's why you hired me, Maya realized. Not just because I was qualified, but because I had no connection to your world. Exactly. You were perfect, educated, responsible, completely removed from the criminal element. And you were good with Lily, which is all that really mattered. He smiled slightly. Though I have to admit, I didn't expect you to be quite so protective. Most babysitters would have run when those men showed up. Most babysitters haven't worked in emergency rooms, Maya said. When you spend years watching people die because they gave up too soon, you learn to fight for every second, every life, even if it costs you everything. Dante studied her with new appreciation. Is that why you helped Victor Sokolov escape? Because you couldn't stand to watch him die? Maya nodded slowly. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was breaking the law, destroying my career. But he was terrified, and I believed him when he said they'd kill him in custody. I thought maybe saving one life was worth the cost. And was it? Maya thought about everything that had happened since that night, losing her job, the blackmail, the beatings, ending up here in this strange world where violence and protection were two sides of the same coin. I don't know, she admitted. Victor's dead anyway, so maybe it didn't matter in the end. It mattered, Dante said firmly. You made a choice based on compassion, not fear or greed. That's rare in any world, but especially in mine. He finished his whiskey and set the glass down. You should get some rest. Doctor's orders. Maya stood, but paused at the door. Mr. Caruso? What happens now? I mean, after I'm healed. Do I go back to my apartment, back to babysitting? Dante was quiet for a moment, shuffling papers on his desk. Your apartment isn't safe anymore. The Volkovs know where you live, and even if I've dealt with the immediate threat, there will be others who remember. As for babysitting, he looked up at her. Lily's grown attached to you. And frankly, so have I. Having someone in the house who genuinely cares about her well-being, not just someone doing a job, that's valuable. Are you asking me to move in permanently? I'm asking you to consider it. Your own suite, generous salary, complete security. You be free. To continue your nursing studies, I have connections at several hospitals that would be happy to provide clinical training. And Lily would have someone who loves her around all the time. He paused. But I understand if this world makes you uncomfortable. If you'd rather leave, I can arrange a new apartment in a secure building, a monthly stipend until you finish school, and enough security to make sure you're never threatened again. Maya's head spun with the implications. Moving in here permanently meant becoming part of Dante's household, part of his world. It meant accepting protection from a man who operated outside the law. It meant, she thought about Lily's bright smile, the way the little girl had cried with relief when she saw Maya was okay. She thought about her cramped apartment where she'd never felt truly safe, where every knock on the door sent her heart racing. She thought about her grandmother in Chinatown, who'd been surviving on the scraps Maya could send after paying blackmail money. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need, Dante said. But Maya, whatever you decide, you're under my protection. That doesn't change whether you stay or go. If you're hooked on the story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Maya returned to her room, her mind spinning with questions and possibilities. Through the window, she could see the lights of Brooklyn stretching out toward Manhattan, a city full of danger and opportunity in equal measure. She'd spent her entire adult life trying to do the right thing, to help people, to build a career that mattered. And somehow, all of that had led her here, to a crime boss's mansion, recovering from injuries sustained while protecting his daughter, being offered a life she'd never imagined possible. The question was, what did the right choice look like when the man offering protection was also the most dangerous person she'd ever met? Maya woke to screaming. Not Lily's voice. She'd memorized every variation of the little girl's cries over 6 months of babysitting. This was deeper, masculine, coming from somewhere downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy hitting a wall. She was out of bed before her mind fully processed what was happening, her nurse's instincts overriding the fear that spiked through her chest. She grabbed the robe draped over the chair and ran into the hallway, nearly colliding with Maria. The housekeeper's face was pale, her hands twisted in her apron. Stay in your room, Miss Maya. Please. Mr. Caruso said. Another crash, followed by Dante's voice, low and deadly. I asked you a question. Maya pushed past Maria and ran down the curved staircase. The main floor was chaos. 2 of Dante's security team stood guard at the front door, weapons drawn. Marco was in the foyer, speaking urgently into his phone. And from the study, Dante's private sanctuary, came sounds that made Maya's blood run cold. She reached the study doorway and froze. 3 men were bound to chairs in the center of the room. Their faces were bloodied, swollen, barely recognizable as human. Dante stood in front of them, his white shirt splattered with red, his knuckles split and bleeding. But his face was the most terrifying thing Maya had ever seen. Not angry, not out of control. Calm, methodical, the expression of a man doing necessary work. Mr. Caruso. Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. Dante turned, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Shame maybe, or concern that she was seeing this side of him. Maya, you shouldn't be here. What are you doing? Protecting my family. He turned back to the men. These are the people who hurt you, who threatened Lily, who thought they could extort money from someone under my protection and walk away clean. Maya recognized them now, despite the damage. The 2 men who'd come to her apartment, and a third older, better dressed, who must have been their boss. Please, the older man rasped through broken teeth. We didn't know she was yours. If you'd known, you would have been more careful, Dante interrupted. You would have chosen a different victim. But you still would have hurt someone. You still would have threatened their family. You still would have used fear to take money from people who couldn't defend themselves. He crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the man. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Every person you've blackmailed, every crime you've committed, every connection you have to the Volkov organization. And then you're going to disappear. Not dead, because I don't want that weight on Maya's conscience. But gone. New identities in a place far from New York, where you'll spend the rest of your miserable lives knowing that if you ever come back, if you ever hurt anyone else, I'll know. And next time I won't be merciful. The man nodded frantically, blood dripping from his chin. Yes, I'll tell you everything. Please, just... Boss. Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. We have a problem. Dante straightened, his jaw tightening. What kind of problem? The Volkovs. They know we have their men. They're demanding a meeting. Tonight. Says if we don't show, they're coming here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Maya watched Dante's shoulders tense, watched the way his hands curled into fists. She'd seen him as a father, seen him as a protector. Now she was seeing the other side, the side that had built an empire on fear and respect. How many? Dante asked quietly. Intel says at least 20 men. Maybe more. They're treating this as an act of war. Dante was silent for a long moment, his mind clearly working through scenarios and possibilities. Then he turned to Maya. How much did you hear? Enough. Maya stepped further into the room, forcing herself to look at the brutalized men without flinching. They're going to attack the house. Not if I meet them first. On neutral ground, with enough firepower to make them think twice. He looked at Marco. Set it up. The warehouse in Red Hook. 2 hours. Tell them I'll bring their men, what's left of them. Dante. Maya surprised herself by using his first name. You can't go there. It's a trap. They'll kill you. Maybe. His expression softened slightly as he looked at her. But if I don't go, they'll come here. And I won't risk Lily being anywhere near that kind of violence. He glanced at Marco. Get everyone non-essential out of the house. Maria takes Lily to the safe house in Connecticut. Use the back roads, multiple vehicles. I want her 100 miles away before this meeting starts. No. The voice came from the doorway, small but firm. Everyone turned. Lily stood there in her pajamas, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her eyes wide but determined. Behind her, Maria wrung her hands anxiously. I'm sorry, Mr. Caruso. She heard the commotion, and it's okay, Maria. Dante crossed the room quickly, kneeling in front of his daughter. His voice became gentle. All traces of the dangerous man vanished. Princess, you need to go with Maria. Remember that vacation house we talked about? The one with the lake. I don't want to go. Lily's lower lip trembled. Bad people are coming, aren't they? Like the ones who hurt Maya? Dante glanced at Maya, something complicated passing across his face. He tried so hard to keep this world separate from his daughter, to preserve her innocence for as long as possible. But children were perceptive, especially children who'd already lost one parent. Yes, he admitted, but Daddy's going to take care of it. That's why you need to go somewhere safe with Maria. What about you? Lily's voice broke. What if the bad people hurt you like they hurt Maya? What if you don't come back? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maya saw something crack in Dante's carefully constructed armor, the fear that every parent carries, that their child will suffer the same loss they've tried so desperately to prevent. I'll always come back to you, Dante said, pulling Lily into his arms. Always. That's a promise. Lily buried her face in her father's shoulder, and Maya felt her throat tighten. This was what the violence was really about. Not money or power or territory, but a father's desperate attempt to protect his daughter from a world that had already taken her mother. Can Maya come with us? Lily asked, her voice muffled. Please. I'll be good. I won't complain. But I want Maya there. Dante looked up at Maya, and she saw the question in his eyes. It would be safer. She'd be far from whatever was about to happen here. But it would also mean leaving him to face this alone, leaving the man who'd protected her when no one else would. "I'll stay," Maya heard herself say. "If you'll let me." "Maya, you don't have to, I know. But you put yourself in danger because of me. Because of what happened at my apartment. The least I can do is..." She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Stay and watch. Offer moral support. Die alongside him if things went badly. Dante studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Lily goes to the safe house. Maya stays. Marco, make the arrangements. The next 2 hours were controlled chaos. Maria packed Lily's things with practiced efficiency. This clearly wasn't the first time they'd executed an emergency evacuation. Security teams moved through the house, checking weapons, coordinating positions, preparing for the possibility that the warehouse meeting was indeed a trap, and the Volkovs would come here regardless. Maya helped Lily pack her favorite toys, trying to keep her voice light and reassuring even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "It's going to be an adventure. You'll get to see the lake, maybe feed the ducks." "Will Daddy be okay?" Lily asked for the 10th time. "Your daddy is the strongest, smartest man I know," Maya said and realized she meant it. "He's going to be fine." Lily hugged her tightly. "Promise you'll take care of him? While I'm gone?" The weight of that promise settled on Maya's shoulders like a physical thing. "I promise, sweetheart." After Lily left, driven away in an armored SUV with 3 security vehicles flanking it, the house felt emptier, colder. Maya found Dante in his study, changed into dark tactical clothing, checking a handgun with the kind of casual expertise that reminded her exactly who he was. "You should eat something," she said from the doorway. "Before you go." Dante looked up, surprised. "You sound like a mother." "I sound like a nurse." "When's the last time you ate?" "This morning. Maybe." He set the gun down and rubbed his face tiredly. "I can't remember." Maya disappeared into the kitchen and returned 10 minutes later with a sandwich and coffee. Dante ate mechanically, his mind clearly elsewhere, but she noticed he finished everything on the plate. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying, for being here when Lily needed someone to be strong for her." "That's not why I stayed." Maya surprised herself with the honesty. "I stayed because you've done so much for me. Protecting me, taking care of the blackmail, giving me a place where I feel safe for the first time in years. I couldn't just run away when you needed support." Dante smiled slightly. "Support? Is that what we're calling it?" "What would you call it?" He was quiet for a moment, studying her with those intense dark eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. "Loyalty. The real kind, not the kind you buy with money or threats. That's rarer than you think in my world." Before Maya could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway. "It's time, boss. The Volkovs are already at the warehouse." Dante stood, strapping on a shoulder holster and shrugging into a jacket that concealed the weapon. He looked every inch the dangerous man his reputation suggested. Controlled, lethal, ready for violence. But when he looked at Maya, his expression softened. "If something happens," he said quietly, "if I don't come back, there's a safe in my bedroom. The combination is Lily's birthday. Inside, you'll find everything you need, bank accounts, contacts, instructions for accessing the trust fund I've set up. Marco will help you get Lily somewhere safe, somewhere far from this life. Will you promise me that?" Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Nothing's going to happen. You're going to handle this meeting, come home, and call Lily to tell her you're okay. Promise me, Maya." "I promise." Dante nodded, then did something that shocked them both. He pulled her into a brief, tight hug. "Thank you. For everything you've done for my daughter. For me." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night with Marco and a team of armed men, leaving Maya alone in a mansion that felt like a mausoleum. She tried to distract herself. She cleaned the study where the interrogation had taken place, scrubbing blood from the floor until her hands were raw. She organized Lily's toys in the playroom. She made coffee she didn't drink and paced the main floor until her legs ached. The security team remaining at the house was tense, alert, weapons ready for an attack that might never come. Maya caught fragments of their radio communications, codes and positions that meant nothing to her but suggested that something was happening at the warehouse. Then, at precisely midnight, all communication stopped. The silence was worse than noise. Maya stood in the foyer, staring at her phone, willing it to ring. The security team exchanged worried glances but said nothing. Minutes crawled by like hours. Finally, headlights swept across the front windows. A black SUV pulled into the circular driveway, followed by 2 more vehicles. The security team relaxed slightly, lowering their weapons. The front door opened. Dante walked in, alive, seemingly unhurt. But the expression on his face made Maya's breath catch. He looked shaken, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. "Is it over?" Maya asked. Dante nodded slowly. "It's over." He walked past her toward his study, then paused. "The Volkovs won't be a problem anymore. Not for you, not for anyone." "What does that mean?" He turned to look at her, and Maya saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Regret, maybe. Or the weight of choices made in dark places. "It means I did what needed to be done to protect my family. And now I have to live with it." Before Maya could ask more, Marco appeared, his expression grim. "Boss, we have another situation. The police are asking questions about the warehouse. Someone called in gunshots. We need to move the... Not here." Dante cut him off, glancing at Maya. "Office. Now." They disappeared into the study, the door closing firmly behind them. Maya stood alone in the foyer, processing what had just happened. The Volkovs weren't a problem anymore. That could only mean one thing. Dante had done what men in his position did when diplomacy failed. She should have been horrified. Should have been packing her things, calling the police, running as far from this world as possible. But instead, she found herself thinking about Lily's terrified face in that apartment hallway, about the bruises on her own wrists, about the way Dante had looked at his daughter before sending her away, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Violence in service of protection. That's what nurses did too, in a way. They hurt people with needles and scalpels, made them suffer through painful treatments, all to save their lives. Was what Dante did really so different? Maya was still wrestling with that question when the study door opened an hour later. Dante emerged alone, looking even more exhausted than before. "You should get some sleep," he said. "It's been a long night." "Are you okay?" Maya asked. The question seemed to surprise him. "I'm fine." "Why?" "Because you look like a man carrying the weight of the world." She stepped closer, close enough to see the strain around his eyes, the tightness in his jaw. "And because I know what it's like to make choices that haunt you, even when they were the right choices." Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he sank down onto the bottom step of the staircase, his carefully constructed armor finally cracking. "I killed 3 men tonight. Not in the heat of battle, not in self-defense. I executed them because they threatened my daughter. Because they hurt you. Because they represented a danger that I couldn't neutralize any other way." Maya sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "And you're wondering if that makes you a monster. Doesn't it? I don't know." The honesty felt important. "But I know that monsters don't read bedtime stories. They don't make butterfly pancakes. They don't spend 2 hours negotiating with their daughter about which stuffed animals to pack for a trip." She paused. "They don't protect people who have nothing to offer them in return." "You have plenty to offer," Dante said quietly. "You love my daughter. You make her laugh. You make this house feel like a home instead of a fortress. That's not nothing, Maya. That's everything." The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. They sat in silence for a while, the clock in the hallway ticking away the hours until dawn. Finally, Dante spoke again. "The offer still stands. If you want to stay, there's a place for you here. Not just as Lily's caregiver, but as part of our family. Such as it is." Maya thought about her tiny apartment in Sunset Park, where she'd never felt truly safe. About her dead-end jobs and crushing debt, and the constant fear that had colored every day for the past 2 years. About the way Lily had wrapped her arms around her neck and made her promise to take care of her daddy. "I'll stay," she said, "but I have conditions." Dante raised an eyebrow. "Conditions?" "I finished nursing school. You promised connections at hospitals for clinical training. I want those. And I want to keep working, keep helping people. I didn't spend years studying to become someone who just stays home and looks pretty." "Agreed. What else?" Honesty. You don't lie to me about the dangerous parts of your life. I know I can't be involved in your business, and I don't want to be. But if there's a threat, if something's coming, I need to know. No more surprises. Dante nodded slowly. That's fair. Anything else? Maya hesitated, then forged ahead. Lily deserves to know the truth about who you are. Not now, not until she's older. But someday she'll figure it out. And when she does, she needs to hear it from you, not from a news report or a schoolyard rumor. Promise me you'll tell her when the time is right. The request clearly hit something deep in Dante. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands that had committed violence tonight, but also held his daughter gently, bandaged Maya's wounds with care. I promise, he said finally. When she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her everything. And then she can decide if she still wants me as her father. She will, Maya said with certainty. Because underneath everything else, you're a good man trying to protect his family. That's what she'll see. Dante looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Not quite love. It was too soon for that, too complicated. But connection, understanding, the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. I should call Lily, he said, pulling out his phone. Let her know it's safe to come home. Maya watched as he dialed, watched his face transform when his daughter's sleepy voice answered. Hey, princess. I'm sorry it's so late. I just wanted to hear your voice. Yes, everything's okay now. The bad people won't bother us anymore. Of course Maya's here. She promised to take care of me while you were gone, remember? He glanced at Maya, and she saw gratitude in his eyes. Not just for staying, but for seeing him, really seeing him, and choosing to stay anyway. We'll see you in the morning, Dante continued. Maria's going to drive you back after breakfast. And then maybe we can all go to the park. Maya too. Okay, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. I love you. He ended the call and sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the night finally seeming to lift from his shoulders. The park sounds nice, Maya said softly. Normal, Dante agreed. That's what I want for her. For you. For all of us. As much normality as we can carve out of this life. Then that's what we'll build, Maya said. One day at a time. They sat together on the stairs as dawn began to break outside. Two people from different worlds who'd found themselves on the same path. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, Maya knew that. There would be more threats, more violence, more nights like this one where Dante had to make impossible choices. But there would also be butterfly pancakes and bedtime stories, homework sessions and trips to the park. Lily's laughter echoing through the house, turning a fortress into a home. And maybe, just maybe, a future where a nursing student and a Mafia boss could figure out how to build something real from the wreckage of their pasts. As the sun rose over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Maya realized something important. She'd spent years trying to save lives in emergency rooms, trying to make a difference one patient at a time. But maybe the life she was meant to save was right here, in this house, with this broken man and his daughter who'd both found a way into her heart when she wasn't looking. The babysitter who'd collapsed protecting his daughter had become something more, a guardian, a confidant, maybe even family. And for the first time since that terrible night 2 years ago when she'd helped a dying man escape, Maya felt like she'd finally done something right. Something worth all the cost. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.